Hey, everybody, welcome to the Soul Report Live. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, and joining me is my good friend and co host, Les Hubert. Together with our producer, Jack Malik, and you, our friends, we're here to awaken the curiosity. We explore the outer limits of human consciousness, spirituality, and the soul's great journey. Hey, we've got an incredible show lined up for you tonight, powerful segments, and as always, we'll wrap it up with your questions in the chat in our open mic session. So stay with us, interact in the chat all the way through this show, and let's drive this journey into an awakening together. Welcome, my friends, and good evening, Les.
Good evening, Doug. We have an interesting subject tonight, navigating the minefield of the ego. We've seen in your lifetime and in mine, we've seen some pretty powerful spiritual leaders out there who have fallen due to their egos. How do we embark on our own spiritual journeys, avoiding those pitfalls?
Well, that's a big question. People spend a lot of money and they spend a lot of time learning how to differentiate themselves from their ego. Great spiritual leaders in the East tell us the ego is basically the root of all evil. So it's a confusing state of mind to be in. And as you spend time and learn the spiritual steps, as we all do, you're given information along the way. And here's the point, my friends. There is the ego, and then there is self-esteem. The ego tends to depart from everyone else, and you kind of draw attention to yourself. That's, rule of thumb, a point. If you're causing attention to come to yourself, then you might be on that slippery path of making your hat fit real tight on your head and get a swollen head, as my teacher once warned me. So the difference is to understand it's okay to feel good about yourself. You have to feel good about yourself because if you don't, no one else will. It starts with you. And so self-esteem, Les, is the bottom line. People feel good about themselves. They feel accomplished. They've done something. They're looking for, a pat on the back or something. That's okay. But when you get to the dark side of ego, that's the part where you think you're better than everyone else. You think your way is the best way. And that leads you into the dangers of false opinion about yourself, false pride. It puts you in positions where you can't back up and say, well, I guess I was wrong. I'm sorry. And so ego in that sense, and exploring this question, it's to understand the difference. When you have self-esteem, you can be fierce in life. You can accomplish great things and be proud of your accomplishments, your achievements, if you will. And that's healthy for the soul. But to be egotistical, that's the downfall. And so to have a good ego, a good balanced ego means the self, if you will. To be proud of yourself, to be loving of yourself, nothing wrong with that. But there's no need to be a narcissist. You can love yourself to a degree that's just quietly done inside. So this is a good question because what I've just outlined here, the difference between that ego that's separating you from everyone else, I this and I that. When you say that a lot, you're suffering from the eye disease, which is the ego.
Right.
But if yourself have good self-esteem and you say, I I did a high jump today and I jumped my height. That was amazing. Okay, your other friends around you might be jealous, or they might say, you're just blowing your own trumpet or whatever. That's okay. But the fact is, you felt good. Don't worry about what other people say. To have a good, solid self-esteem means you're not a people pleaser. Because if you do, you're going to lose that self-esteem and you're going to become a doormat. You have to be a doorway, not a doormat, and that means dealing with people. So if people think they're doing that for his ego. Well, how do you know? It's in the man's or the woman's mind. It doesn't matter. But if they're egotistical, as you see some political leaders or some people in commerce or people in a variety of sports, You know, ego has to be there because it's essential to them maintaining that position, but they don't have to be egotistical. And that's another lesson. There you go, Les.
We've seen people like like the Jim Jones, and I think it was in Uganda, who became this despotic spiritual, obviously not spiritual, but despotic ruler of these people. And there was all this mass suicide. What happened to him? How did he lose control of his journey?
The old adage that absolute power corrupts, okay? Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So people, when they start to take on the I am God complex,
Hmm.
or they allow themselves to be considered a godlike complex person, then that leads to positions that warp the mind. And I'll tell you, the whole idea of gaining power and rising to great fame, whether you're a political leader or not, is a challenge for the soul. Now, I was alive at the time that Jim Jones made all his followers drink that infamous lemonade
Oh, yeah.
and commit mass suicide. He was doing that as a protest against the rest of the world, sacrificing the people that followed him to their deaths, if you will. So, the lesson to us folks down here in the trenches is we should never ever think that the fellow at the top is absolute because he's only there for a little while. And for whatever the spiritual circumstances are, the cosmos allow them to come to that point, as we all will on our journey to develop our spiritual selves. We
Hmm.
will all be in a position of having absolute power over the world in our own journey at some time. Either we've done it in the past or it's going to be in the future. It's like everyone will be a, a demigod leader, okay? Then there's only two kinds, the ones that have been already and the ones that are going to be. Now, that might sound a little foolish and it might sound ridiculous, but everything in the world, if we look at this as our classroom, each of us has to experience everything in the world at least once. Sometimes when we don't get the message, we go back, a couple times. We got a thick skull like me, maybe 3 or 4 times. But the point is, we will be in that position. So as we're down in the trenches here looking at the person at the top, we should be saying, okay, I wonder what they're learning. We're allowing them to lead us, we're giving them authority over us.
Right.
And that's one of the things that's necessary for someone to be absolute as a leader or a demigod or a maniac. And, I can only think from my own perspective, who would want to be that? Who would want this? Who would be so vain as to think they knew what would be the proper thing for people to do or for the world to do?
Hmm.
So that's when they get into that nasty side of the ego, in my humble opinion, and they get a little absorbed with their authority or power, and then they become absolute that they're right and everybody else is wrong. And then they spill over into that temptation of being a godlike figure. That's got to be pure madness. However, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea, I'm not proposing everybody's going to run out and do this, but just remember those people at the top don't live very long unless they take care of their subordinates. If you look back in history, you'll find that there are great rulers, and when they were moral leaders and just, the proof of their leadership was that the society prospered. Everybody did.
Right.
When you're into a society where there's the lower half of the population is in abject poverty, and the upper portion of the society is full of corruption, then you can see they've crossed the line from being a saint into being a sinner. And so goes the leadership, so goes the people. So, what's going on with Jim Jones? He became insane. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I was there watching the news reports. We couldn't believe, as we watched the news, what was happening. There was a senator from the US that went there and they were shooting at him. There were people who making inquiries. And the enablers and the people who were the soldiers or policemen, they are as great to blame as Jim Jones was himself because they enabled him to carry out this horrific tragedy.
Right.
So there have been many leaders. You look at Hitler, you can look at any monster, Pol Pot
Oh God, yeah.
in
Mm.
the Vietnam or I can't think of the country name,
Cambodia. Cambodia,
Cambodia.
yeah. Yeah.
And so there are always, these people who rise to great power, but they do so from fear. And when you see a leader leading by fear, that's usually the sign that the country, the civilization is headed downward. But it's all done with the enablers and by giving authority to them. So we have to, as people, spiritual people, assess what's going on and stand up to the wrong, or the strong rather, when they're in the wrong. Stand up to the strong when they're in the wrong. Truth to power, if you will. And you have to do so for righteousness' sake. And that, my friends, is part of the spiritual journey.
Mm. You
That's,
know, we see, things like Jim Jones. I forget the people who were following. They thought there was something coming on a comet that was going to take them away, so they all committed mass suicide. We have other religious, like Jimmy, I think his name was Falwell, who fell. Then we have the Tammy Baker and her husband. They fell. How do you discern who is a good spiritual leader and who is not?
are they moral or not? Are the people around them being prosperous or not? Are they opulent living or are they humble living? Is there activities for the greater good or for themselves and their enablers or the inner circle? It's pretty simple. People who live in palaces don't necessarily care about the people living on the street.
Hmm.
So just an assessment of what's going on. Is the society prosperous? Is everybody having a fair shake? Is there, the American dream? Is that being fulfilled? Or is there impedances? Or is there corruption? Or, is the family of the leader benefiting? So it's pretty easy to do. Say, is everything going well? Or do we have peace? Do we have prosperity? But anyway, it comes down to every society, every civilization, every country goes through the same karmic and drama of the daily life. I mean, Vietnam was a big thing when I was a young man. I
Yeah.
almost went to fly jets and go to Vietnam. I didn't.
Wow.
The idea that warfare is bad, prosperity and generosity is good. So if everybody's in a society making everyone cooperative and happy and prosperous, it's got to be doing something right.
Hmm.
And the great civilizations that lasted a long time had that criteria within them. So all these leaders that you're asking about, these are dark souls. They come into the world because they've been dark souls before, and they're coming in to feed on the fear and the self-aggrandizement.
Uh,
And that's what they're doing. They're feeding on this spiritual energy. They don't last long. They're assassinated, they die early, usually they die in shame. I mean, you look in the Second World War, Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin, they all died terrible deaths, and they died from within, shall we say. They
right.
didn't have the empires that last forever. The Third Reich was supposed to be forever. And so it's the same. Look at America. It sustained itself. It broke away from the tyrannical aspects of the British King George, and what was going on with the extremes and a lot of graft and you know, remember the Boston Tea Party story, right?
Hmm.
So the point being is that if you see in a society where there's justice, number one, then you see that there is a caring and a moral leadership, that's number two. Then you see the people in the country living in a lifestyle that's more peaceful and prosperous. Doesn't matter whether it's a roaring 20s or the baby boom in the 40s and 50s. It's a matter that there's prosperous and growth. Well, you're on the right track. But you have to pay attention to the world too, because the planet has its own consciousness and it deals with these tyrants. Their
Kind of
country,
self-regulates, in other words.
it balances.
Mm.
Their countries have earthquakes, and in Turkey there was a takeover where there was a democracy, and now they have an elected dictator. What happened in Turkey? More than 40,000 people lost their life in a
Mm.
minute in a
Right.
huge earthquake. We tend to forget from faraway places, but that's going on right around the world now. Why is the world suffering quaking and shaking and tsunamis and heat? It's the
And
hatred.
look what Russia just suffered.
It's that's right.
Mm.
Russia's an aggressor, and Russia's settling, suffering from earthquakes and also tsunamis and things. What's going on? Well, the Earth thinks. It has its own consciousness. It's rebelling in its own way. It just takes the world a little longer to get up to speed or blow off that steam more exactly. So
Mm.
if you look at what's going on, you'll see that there is a balance between nature and the governments and the people on the world. And I'm just so sorry that we're going through this predicted time of extremes, time
Mm.
of chaos. The great seers like Edgar Casey predicted it back in the 40s, Ross Peterson in the 70s, myself later on, Paul Solomon as well. Other people out there, Michael Blake Green from the Evergreens, all of them. And there's more. Don't get me wrong, my friends. There are many, many seers who have forecast this, and even today, they are forecasting things that are happening. Friends and neighbors of the Many Mansions Spiritual Group, the Many Mansions International Ministry, the people who are developing their intuitive abilities are having dreams about events that are happening or about to happen.
Mm.
I've had dreams of nuclear explosion, at least one, and that's going to happen for sure. But I'm a voice crying in the wilderness. But why is it happening? Look what happened in Iran. There were gigantic bombs in the world dropped into Iran, and they exploded. Those rippling effects, if you take a map, if you go towards Russia, you'll find almost in a straight line through the earth that there was an earthquake or there was devastation in Russia or near Russia. What does that mean? Well, we
Mm.
tried to blow up the planet, even though we said we were blowing up some deep sheathed bunkers, and it went right through the planet. Here's something to think about, Les. Iran's got a lot of oil in it, doesn't it?
Mm.
Middle
All
East's got
right.
a lot of oil. Think about this. What if the oil had caught fire from these gigantic explosions underground? What would have happened?
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow.
There you go.
It's two things come to mind when I was listening to you speak, Doug. Was I remember watching the movie Cromwell, excellent movie for those of people out there who haven't seen it, with Richard Harris. And one of the problems they had with King James was the fact that he would not work with Parliament. He was like, "No, I'm here. God assigned me this job, and you'll never get rid of me." And Cromwell's argument, along with the people, was the king is not England, and England is not the king. So they had to differentiate, and he refused to deal with Parliament, and so he ended up losing his head because people wanted to evolve. And it also comes to mind. I was reading an interesting thing about Edgar Casey, whom you just spoke of, and he mentioned in his biography how he knew he had his own journey of temptation because he demonstrated to a friend that he could manipulate people without them having any knowledge of it. And there was a woman who hated him for some reason he didn't know. And he bet his friend money that this woman would come into his office, and just by whatever he did, visualization, she came into the office with his friend there and she said, "I don't even know what I'm doing here. I hate your guts." And she walked out and he said, "That's the power I have." And he said, "If I abuse it, I will lose my ability." So all these people who are spiritual leaders, do they all have to walk that road of temptation? Do they all have that balancing act going on? Oh, I lost your mic, Doug. I can't hear you.
Yeah, spiritual power is power of the highest degree. I'm going to step back a little bit and remind the audience who somebody's going to write in and say, Les, it was King Charles. It wasn't King James.
Okay.
So, and there were two King Charles, actually. One was his son who restored the Magna Carta with Cromwell back in the day. And that's why there has never been another King Charles until now. So, long and the short of it is, yes, you have spiritual power. You can manipulate things. You have creative force in you. It's called virtue. Lack of a better name, it's referred to in the Bible as virtue, the healing force, that power that has creative and destructive forces. And it's how you, the awakened person, the spiritually advanced person, advances, being moral or not, that you use that force or that power. And as such, Casey wasn't showing off a little, although he was, showing his friend, look, I have this power. And that's why Casey was not a nonviolent person. I'm the same. If I get really angry with people, they get sick. And then I feel bad that I was angry for them or about them, even if they deserve my wrath. But the secret of advancing is to be able to control yourself so that you don't become violent. You don't become psychically violent. You don't become spiritually destructive. Because
Mm.
remember, Alpha and Omega, I am the creator, I am the destroyer, says Lord thy God. Well, as you get closer and closer, you pick up on that power and ability naturally because you are ascending to the great heights of knowing the spiritual power within. And
Mm.
again, it can go to the dark side, like the Jim Jones and the Hitlers and the other people. Hitler had a dream. He was a corporal in the army, and he was in a foxhole with a mortar crew, and he had a dream that a mortar was going to drop right in the foxhole. He woke up, jumped out of the mortar, out of the foxhole, and the mortar came in and killed the other people there.
Wow.
So he was being protected because he was going to be a leader. I don't mean to say much about, evaluating. Edgar Casey had great hopes for Hitler. And during the Second World War, or sorry, before that, Hitler's trains ran on time. Their economy went well. It was a country that was broken from the First World War, and he and his enablers brought it back to great prosperity to the point that they almost conquered the entire world, at least in Europe. So
Mm.
the force there was being developed for construction, but then he turned to the dark side.
Yeah.
Something happened. So it's the same with all people. When you get to a point, you have power, and here's the point, my friends: having the great strength and having the strength not to use it. That's the spiritual lesson. And that's the point of this comment. Last.
Ah, excellent. Well, after a short break, we'll be right back with news and views and karma in the news.
Are you searching for clarity, guidance, and peace of mind? For nearly 50 years, Douglas James Cottrell has used his intuitive abilities to help people from all walks of life overcome challenges and make informed choices. During his clairvoyant consultations, Douglas helps you uncover the root causes of life's challenges, whether in relationships, health, or finances. He offers insights into your future and practical guidance to empower your decisions today. Available by phone, Skype, Zoom, or FaceTime, Douglas's consultations fit your schedule and lifestyle. Heal, evolve, be the person you were born to be. Book your clairvoyant consultation today with Dr. Douglas James Cottrell.
So, Doug, we have some Russian things going on over in Russia. We have a couple of nuclear submarines off the coast of Russia. What do you think's going on over there? What is in the mind of our leaders, and what could be the possible karma of such action?
Dangerous, dangerous times. Um, I think we have an amateur uh, leader in the West versus a very highly skilled, almost monstrous leader in Russia. And this idea of a contest between the two of them, not it's drawing in the forces of, like, I can send my airplanes over to bomb Iran. I can send my nuclear submarines to intimidate Russia. Well, Mr. Putin or President Putin does not intimidate well. He doesn't like people, and people seem to fall out of, for some reason, they all seem to fall out of windows to their deaths. And I mean, two and two is four. We know that this is, they're being sanctioned, I think is the word to be polite. So as we look at what's going on in Russia, we have to wonder what's the game? What's the plan? And then we have to come to the understanding that Russia is not a superpower. A little country called Ukraine has been battling them for 3 years and winning. They've survived. That's what I mean by winning. It was an outright attack. It was not a sneak attack, but certainly was a ill-planned attack. And so we look at the situation saying the idea of Russia going to Ukraine was to acquire territory, to acquire those precious minerals, to get the agricultural crops. Ukraine is an amazing agricultural society. It provides food for many, many places in Europe. And then we look at what's really going on. Well, there's this acquisition. It's kind of like your place is my place. I'm taking it over. And now we have somebody who's really skilled at doing this, who has this intention to get back to the way I think or suspect he wants the Russia to become the USSR again, where it holds ownership over all the little countries around its borders. And I think that's the intention. I had a dream. My friends in Poland, people were coming in cars and they were afraid. They were hiding in their house. They didn't know who these strangers were. And that certainly makes sense that if the next country after Ukraine were to fall, Poland would probably be next, and then Sweden, Finland, etc. So everybody's on guard, but the idea of sending nuclear submarines around, publicly disclosing it, is not conventional. Matter of fact, it sounds foolish. It sounds almost, like, I have these nuclear submarines. You're going to, bow to my wills or my determination. And I'm trying to think up a good word for that. But the reality is, Mr. Putin doesn't intimidate. He retaliates.
Uh,
Okay, so what's going on? I heard recently in the news that Russia is now selling homes in the conquered lands of Ukraine to Russians. They're
oh boy.
actually selling places. Why are they doing that? Because Russia is short of money. Remember the old adage, when you back somebody into the corner, they're going to fight back. And so sending nuclear submarines and saying, we're going to blow you up or threaten you, would have been better to keep that one quiet.
Mm.
It's in the news. And too much people showing their intentions, especially at the highest levels of government, is dangerous because people get time to prepare and retaliate.
Mm.
Sometimes you don't see it. So the things in Russia right now is that Russia is in a downward sliding slope, and Ukraine is really trying its best. I had a dream where maybe the president and his family in Ukraine might have to seek refuge in another country, at least exile themselves for a little bit. But the Ukraine people are pretty tenacious people. And
Mm.
then the European people, knowing the European Union, if you will, knowing what happened in the Second World War, they're going to band together. They don't need America. They don't need the West. They can do this themselves. Russia's one country, and there are many countries. And so the war is being prolonged, and it's becoming more vicious. I mean, I'm just giving you my personal observations now. But to the spiritual aspects, what's going on in Russia is a microcosm for what's going on in the rest of the world. Out of Mother Russia came peace for the world when, at the reign of the fellow with the scar on his head, I think is the president, and President
Gorbachev. President Gorbachev.
Gorbachev and Reagan, they took down the wall that divided Berlin. Walls don't ever succeed at anything other than keeping people apart for 40 years or less. And they had, out of Mother Russia came hope for the entire world.
Right.
Think about that. Russia was the first country to have something in space. Russian cosmonauts achieved great things. Russia has a truly great heritage, but they also have a dark side. Ask people in Poland what happened during the Second World War, and they always remember not the Nazis, but the Russian soldiers who did atrocious things. So where are we going with that? Well, sending submarines out there. Intuitively speaking, I can see a bunch of people scrambling around the submarines, running drills, worried and scared that they're going to have to launch missiles, and nothing is going to happen to it. I think there's going to be more tsunami, more disturbances in the oceans that might deter that initiative of trying to play chicken. I mean, Russia has huge machinery, but again, it doesn't have the money to operate. So maybe that's what this when somebody's down, that's when you give it to them when they're incapable. But it's a dangerous game, and I'm giving a little more detail than I thought. But these things are just flashing in my mind as we're talking. Les.
Yep. I'm wondering if it's just, political chess because, as you said, you don't want to give away your plans, especially as if it's a high stakes poker game. You never show your hand. And yet they're doing that. I mean, Trump's doing that. And it's like, why would you even say that unless you want political points? But one thing I have been on a Russian sub, and the quality of their workmanship is not up to par with ours. But they do have more submarines, and even Putin was saying, "Oh well, my subs are already off the coast of your country, so what's the big deal?" So you wonder what's going on. But it's like I'm bigger than you are, and you're bigger than whatever. It's very immature, but you don't see anything really bad happening there.
I don't see a mistake. Okay, I don't see something, but I have seen there will be a nuclear explosion somewhere in the world. I've seen that. So I first thought it was going to be at a big domed cement place like Chernobyl. And sure enough, there was pictures in the news where there had been a missile that went into this domed cement, what would we call it, shelter that I had seen in my dream, but it didn't blow it up. So maybe with all the prayers of our good friends out there who are spiritually minded, maybe we were able to dissuade that from actually going through. Because I had been talking about it for a long time, and I had a dream where I was told my purpose was to tell everybody, it was to warn them. So I've been doing it on the air for a while. So maybe we were able to, as good people, stop that. But there's still a possibility of somebody pressing the wrong button, a mistake happening, somebody overreacting. So we're teetering on the edge. The people at the highest levels usually are in the know. I'll bet you they're not hanging around in their cities or countries. They're probably going to the country or they're prepared for some times, whether it's Europe or here or the Middle East. So I don't see anything from the submarines. I just see the same people laughing, like they're just like, yeah, this is a game of chicken. This isn't going anywhere. So the purpose is, are you saying these things to benefit the people at home, or you're actually playing this worldwide game of chess? And so the answer, intuitively speaking, I don't see any explosion the whole time I've been talking here from submarines.
And just mutual destruction. It's interesting, because I remember reading, if you can correct me on this, Casey had great hope for Russia as far as spiritual development. Do you think that's still going to happen there, or is it happening, or what's going on?
It is Mother Russia. That's what it's been always, hope has been coming from Mother Russia. And in the time when Gorbachev was there, Russia, prospered. There was the Berlin Wall came down. There was freedom throughout the world. Really good things happen. Gorbachev and Reagan had a wonderful relationship, shall I call it that, politically speaking. So, yes, Russia, for some reason, has a gift of being able to be helpful to the world and or harmful, right? Russia was the great evil, as President Reagan said. It was the evil empire. Well, all of a sudden, overnight, it wasn't. And President Reagan was asked, did he change his mind? He said, well, the things were back then, but it's not the same now. It's a good place. And that's, is it the country? No, it's the leadership and the enablers that are going on. And so Russia, being whatever it is in history, has been a way shore, but perhaps that time has faded. Maybe Africa is going to be now what it once was, a great leader in the world. Certainly, the African continent is coming together with a single currency. The people in China have been going through through Africa, because Africa is rich in resources, and it's
Yeah.
twice the size of America. It's
Yeah.
twice the size physically. So out of Africa might be the hope for the world. But in the days gone by, Mother Russia was the place. A lot of profits came from Russia. Certainly, if you look back, we said earlier, the karma of the politics. You can see that back in the day, when there was the czar and the family were assassinated, we ended up in communism. Not socialism, but communism. Socialism means everybody owns everything and everybody takes care of each other. Communism, and a socialist communist, means a few people in the inner circle own everything, and the rest
Right.
of the people are basically tenants in kind. So
Mhm.
I don't know what the point of this, to get to how can we as spiritual people see what's going on. Look at the different countries that are prospering, and look at the different countries that are taking care of the immigrants and are welcoming new wealth into their country. And I think, it leads to China. China is doing very, very well as a world leader, always has, because can you think of a time when China ever went to war with anybody?
Mhm.
Not in 200 years.
All right.
But they
Yeah.
have either the second or the third largest army or military force in the world.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. They're not using their military to encroach on or take over other countries. They're using it for defensive purposes, and they are quite efficient with their weaponry and their people, etc. But we fear them, and yet they're the world's banker. And whenever things are manufactured, mostly it's from China. When
Mhm.
COVID was here, where did we lean for masks and gowns and things? Was China. The
Yeah.
world was lining up on the runways to get scare, and they provided for it, even though we were criticizing them here in the West about they were responsible. And I had seen that there was that laboratory that leaked the virus, was perhaps a mistake. I don't think it was intentional, but they were getting criticism from the West, and yet they were sending all these medical supplies. That's kind of a neat way to think that they were overlooking the criticism. They could have denied us,
Sure.
assessing things,
Oh
but
yeah.
so a lot of lessons at our enemies. China is on the incline now. They have roadways and they're building bridges and they're getting highways to far out places in the country. And
Yeah.
they're also experimenting with growing grass and trees in the deserts, encapsulating water. It's fascinating to find out what's going on there. We never hear too much about that, but they're
Mhm.
making their country into a powerful food producing place. Can we say
Mhm.
the same?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, I think I was reading not too long ago they're building a massive highway between them and Russia because they don't want to put their goods on the high seas. They don't want it to be subject to whatever. So they're saying, well, we'll just build this massive highway and we'll just trade that way, and they're doing it. Thinking back in history, you look at these great countries like these great empires like ancient Rome. You look at Atlantis, Lemuria. You look at these great nations. As Edgar Casey and you like to say, there's always this duality. We live in a world of duality. When you have a great country like that, like let's say like Rome, they had so many breakthroughs. They invented cement. They invented the arts. I mean, they were really powerfully creative people. And yet on the dark side, they were horrifically violent and nasty to the Christians. Is this always going to be the same here? I mean, is there always that duality where you see like Mother Russia with the spirituality, but on the other side, she has a dark side. Is it always going to be that way?
Well, Rome had great roadways. They had aqueducts, they had sewers, they had civilization. And as it progressed, I think there were 81 emperors in Rome that served for 2 years or more. There were emperors who didn't last that long, but and the emperor in the Roman Empire had control over the entire world, at least their world in Europe,
Hmm.
and it stretched for great distance. King Genghis Khan had the same. The Ming dynasty in China and other dynasties had the same. Great wealth, great control over large tracts in the world. But they all seemed to fall apart or were conquered from within. So it wasn't so much as a matter of, you know, dualism or pluralism or extremes. This took generations, and it was in the end of Rome, it was the Romans themselves, the Roman citizens became indulgent in all the physical pleasures.
Uh, mm,
Okay. They had euphoriums, they had people were eating so much they would go and vomit and come back and eat some more.
oh, yeah.
And
Wow.
they had all those wonderful places, you know, where they had a lot of physical activity. So we put it that way. And so it became a fat uh, aggrandizement of self or indulgement of all the pleasures of the self. And then they would bring in soldiers from or people from faraway countries they had conquered and put them in the Roman army. And what happened? Sooner or later, those foreigner soldiers became, you know, the conquerors of Rome at the downfall. It came from within.
Mm,
So it's the same with all societies. It's within that they are curbed. And so what does that mean? Is it's just kind of they don't read the books or they don't get the lessons from one society to another. No, it's the karmic influence that every nation in the world has to shift and give up power, but every nation in the world becomes the most powerful nation in the world. Romania was the most powerful nation. Transylvania was, you know, Poland was at one time. And I'm talking about, you know, the time when we had knights in armor and stuff like that. And Atlantis was a great power place, as was Lemuria in the Pacific. And yet they all went away.
yeah.
Was it by attrition? Was it by self-indulgence? Was it one faction, you know, with genocide, killing off the other side? Or was it something else? Well, in the throes of Atlantis, the earth just opened up and Atlantis sank. It was predicted it was going to happen. The same with Lemuria, the same in the Incas, and the same with the in you know the Mayan empires and
The Aztecs, yeah.
what happened? Well,
Mm,
the earth rebelled. And that, right now, if my friends, you're listening to this, and please send your comments into the chat. We want to answer the questions here in the open mic session. Anything that we're talking about, we want to hear what you have to say, want your comments or questions towards the end of the show in the fourth segment. So put them in the chat right now. And the point is that all of these civilizations, which were huge, suffered some catastrophe, even to the ones that are 30,000 years old before the pyramids, and to those, you know, those civilizations that go back in time. What happened to them? There was some sort of earth change that affected them. The Great Flood, as everybody knows about the Bible, about Noah and the Great Flood's in all the histories of all the countries around the world.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Why is that?
Mm,
Well, my opinion is that the Earth flipped on its axis, 90
uh,
degrees, and the oceans, which were going in one direction, and the Earth flipping in another direction, the
uh,
oceans with centrifugal force just kept on going, and they washed over all the
wow.
continents of the planet, wiping out great civilizations in a moment.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then it took all this time to get back to where we are. Are we headed in that same direction? Could be. The North and South Pole mechanically are wobbling even now. And maybe if we set off a few more nuclear explosions or something, that maybe we're going to wreck the orbit or the integrity of the planet is changing. Certainly, I know I've predicted on the Coast to Coast radio show I've been on a few times and CFRB in Toronto back in, I think it was the early 80s. I had a vision where the inside of the world, the planet, is heating up and that the core of the Earth is spinning at a different speed than the outer shell or the crust. And that's why we're having all this friction. That's why the crust is breaking and flexing. The West Coast, so we see the Rocky Mountains. People think it's like the plates are pushing over one another like this. I
Hmm.
think that they pushed upward just like this. They came together and they had no place to go but up. And that's why they find seashells and
Hmm.
other sea animals at altitude in the Rocky Mountains. Well, what if, think of this, what if the plates move and the Rocky Mountains come down level again? Oh my God, where's the Pacific going to come? Inland.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're actually finding that the mountains are still growing in height, which is incredible. After a short break, we will be back with mysteries and unexplained, and then we'll have our open mic session, and you can send in your questions. And also, we're going to give you a little bit of a teaser before we close out the show. We'll be right back.
Are you searching for clarity, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of the spiritual world around you? Meet Douglas James Cottrell, PhD, a visionary author and teacher who's helped countless people transform their lives. His books are a gateway to profound insights, offering guidance, inspiration, and the tools you need to unlock your full potential. From unlocking your intuition to discovering spiritual truths, Douglas's books are your trusted companions on the path to personal growth. Don't wait. Start your journey today. Visit his website douglasjamescottrell.com to explore and purchase his life-changing work. Your next breakthrough is just a page away.
Our scenario takes us back to the red planet of Mars, Doug. There apparently, in the area called the Terra Meridionea, there are three tower-like structures that kind of mirror what we see in the pyramids of Giza. What is your take on that? Are these man-made? Are these natural artifacts? What's going on over there?
Well, they're not man-made, that's for certain. I mean, the scientific research is that they are erosion, that they're natural, like in Arizona where you have those pillars of stone that go straight up, and they're just whereas everything else around them is gone. So the idea is that they could be erosion. Okay, then the question is erosion. How did that happen? You know,
Hmm.
was there water erosion like there was in Arizona with the in the valleys and the rivers and the wind and so the water erosion was there, in the Grand Canyon? I don't think so. So if it's the scientific reports that say, oh, it was just erosion, it was soft earth around these spikes that were there, which would have been pushed up from the ground, like again, the same things that happened for us in the mesas and these other formations of rocks being pushed up from below. It's kind of like, okay, next question, what was the erosion? Was it wind? Was it water? Because that's the only two ways that erosion can take place. And of course, then you have to go to the valley. Well, there's no wind and there's no water on Mars, so maybe that doesn't work. So I kind of think that these were because they're like needle like figures. There's a picture up there now. You can see them that these do not look like they're man-made. These do not look like they're um, natural occurrences. So what are they? Well, as you know, we on this show have talked about Mars being a very active and alive planet back in the day. So I'm going to go with that these are somewhat in my mind. I can see people on scaffolding working around with Egyptian looking clothes and hats. I'm going
Hmm.
to say that these were man-made or produced as structures because I
Because
can't
you,
I
right.
can't accept them being eroded, as natural geological. These resemble sediment-filled fracture lines or Martian hoodoos, as it's called, of soft rock eroded away, leaving hardened spikes behind. Again, okay, scientists, tell me how that happened if there's no wind erosion or there's no water erosion. And look at
Right.
that, look at that plane, Les. It's flat,
Yeah.
and they're in a straight line. So I'm going to say Nope, these were had the hand of beings on them. I'm not off-world beings. Naturally, they're off-world from us. Uh, so I'm going to say they're perfectly. The report is on July the 25th. This came out, or in July of this year. These three massive, perfectly aligned towers were arranged like the Orion constellation. This is suggesting intelligent design, and I'm going to go with that.
What do you think their purpose was? Was it for worship or for communication? Maybe to leave behind some kind of signal that people had been there, like the face on Mars? Or
Wow, that's I don't know. I wasn't there at the time. I don't know. I'm gonna have to sidestep that one and say I think they were like telegraph poles. Okay, they were some sort of line of communication. That just
like,
popped in my head. Yeah.
you can't. I mean, you can't argue the symmetry of it. It's amazing. I mean, you don't see typically things like that in nature, especially on other planets. But you never know. But we find it very interesting. They're finding a lot of different stuff on Mars that they can't explain. I guess we'll only know it when we finally get there. As which
Well,
oppose,
we are there. I mean, we got helicopters and we got vehicles. Different countries have them running around. I
well, I
think
mean,
we're gonna watch them.
boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Boots on the ground.
Well, I'm up for that. You know.
Okay, you'll be on the next rocket.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing the alignment of like the pyramids in Gaza on Mars. And by the way, since I'm a little on the heavy side, I probably would lay about what 50 pounds lighter if I was on Mars. I don't know. I could jump around a lot easier. So, but there is an idea that these are just attributed to some psychological tendency to seeing meaningful shapes and familiar objects in random patterns. Like looking up at the clouds, you can see butterflies and angels and horses and stuff. Well, okay, but these don't change. They're solid.
Hmm.
They're there. So I'm going to the idea that this is some sort of ancient communication device.
Ah, okay. So you do see us getting eventually there to Mars with boots on the ground, so to speak, with astronauts setting up. Do you see like cities there or structures that we're going to be setting up or habitats at all?
I think so because I had a vision of where I saw communities living on a planet that had a light side and a dark side, and all the communities were on the dark side, just near the transition zone between light and dark. And the reason they were in the dark side because it was cooler.
Oh, okay.
So after some thought, and this was an elaborate. They had communities, they had their own rules, they had marriages were between different age groups, and they had all kinds of unusual things. And I thought, I'm looking at the moon because the moon has this permanent light and dark side. And it would be really hot in the sun, but cool in the dark, but you needed the light for whatever. And then I'm thinking, Mars doesn't have that. But again, as we move forward in time and we find out more that maybe we were closely connected with Mars, as more and more people are claiming that they were aware of those times. The Martian boy is a very famous story about him remembering life on Mars and how he visited Earth as he took vacations. So there was a close similarity between Mars and Earth. I think that's going to be discovered. And then, I mean, what's missing? If we had water on Mars, there could be life there. So why not? Anyway, I haven't had any visions and dreams about Mars particularly, but I have seen us moving out into the cosmos out of necessity. We have
Oh,
to move out.
wow. As we close out the segment, do you see any possibility of? Somebody once asked me. They said, "Do you think we'll be living on the moons of Mars before we live on the main body of the planet?"
Wherever there's water, we're going to be there. And I think there's some discovery of water on those moons. And more that I find out from time to time, the, the reports are coming in. There's water everywhere. There's
Oh, really?
ice
Wow.
everywhere. One of the planets in the solar system, I can't think of it now, has what appears to be a solid ice surface or ground surface, but underneath it there's an ocean of water. And I think it's one of the moons. So
Hmm.
wherever we find water, that's where we're going.
Interesting. Interesting. And now it's time for some questions and answers. And we have one from Sybil Farmer. For those with low self esteem, how can you build it up over a lifetime?
One step at a time. Self esteem can be decided right now. Okay? So, number one, you don't believe what other people say. You don't believe that their opinion about you is more important than your opinion about yourself. And in order to build up your self esteem, you got to look in the mirror and say, hey, nice looking body. Hey, nice hair. You got to find something out about yourself, nice eyes. And so you start to look at and say, I can't manage my reputation. I can manage my character. My reputation is in the minds of other people, but my character is in myself. And so then you become disinterested in what other people think or say. And you start to say to yourself, I was right about that. I suffered when I said something and it was right, but everybody, would criticize me and ridiculed me. But you know what, my friends? That's what they do when they're jealous. That's what they do when people don't know any better other than to criticize. And that's what they do to you. So move away from those people who you think are your friends. You don't have to impress anyone. We all want to. We all want to be accepted. There's no two ways about that. But here's a secret, because you asked. Over your lifetime, you begin to realize that you're all alone. You're all alone in your mind. And what you do in the world is interactive. You're not codependent on everybody all of your life, although you might be when you're younger. You might think somebody else has a better opinion or better judgment than yourself, but they don't. Beware people who tell you what to do. Why are they telling you that? Because they're afraid to do it, but they want to tell you to do it, so when you do it, then they can come back and say, I was right. Or if you screw up, they can say, well, see, you silly person, you listened to me. You ought not to have done that. So getting out of that zoo and trying to get self-esteem is basically, don't worry what other people think or say about you. I can guarantee you they don't think about you any more than a moment. They don't think about you unless your name comes up. And even then, if you're not important to them, they don't care. So understanding the rules is to say, you've got to find something that you're good at. As we all know, Les, at the end of your lifetime, you're really good at one thing. It's a natural. It's something you do. When you're younger, you always have the easy things and you want to do the hard things. But as you get older, you realize it's better to walk the easy way than the hard way, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So take a lesson from your elders. Les and I. And our producer, Jack, he's here in the wings putting things together for us, and say, okay, what am I good at? And that's what I'm going to be. Because you see, you can only go do one thing well. You can't do 2 or 3 or 5 things well at the same time. Impossible. And do the things that make you comfortable in your own skin. And forgive yourself if you made a mess. That's okay. You know why? Because everybody does the same. Everybody makes a mess. Everybody makes mistakes. Be on guard. All the great Mahatma Gandhi said it, that he would trust a tree as he stood in front of it, and he would beware another person, in his case another man, who stood in front of him. And when two people meet, that's when politics begin. Those are famous quotes from him. He was a very wise man. So how do you build up self-esteem over a lifetime? No, today, a little bit at a time, one step at a time. Start to tell yourself, like, hey, you're not so bad. Yeah, you made some mistakes. So what? Everybody does. But you're really good at checkers. You're really good at cutting grass. You're really good at shopping and finding bargains. You're really good at something. And then, okay, what else are you good at? And if you stop comparing yourself to everybody else, you'll begin to say, hey, Douglas, you're not so bad. Hey, Douglas, you did that right. Hey, you helped somebody else who was in distress. Hey, you put a smile on somebody's face by being courteous, holding the door open for them. Hey, you did some good works. What we're talking about here is compassion. And when you meet somebody who says, you want to be a doorman all your life, and you're holding the door open for them, you can say, well, in my last life, I used to have the doors to the palace in Arabia, and I was the door opener and closer. What? They'll say. So, sarcasm, when people give you sarcasm when doing something good, they're showing you their spiritual poverty. So, that's a long explanation on how to answer that question, but it doesn't take a lifetime to do it. It begins today. And if
Mm.
you listen to this show, again, this show is posted. You can come back and listen to this over and over again. And please do, because there's a lot of people who get confused between trying to be a spiritual, loving person and they end up being a doormat. And my teacher told me, a giver always meets a taker. And so you have to be able to say the the one word with the two letters, N-O, no. Do you want to come over to my place now? Be clean up my house? No, I'm busy that day. I'd rather not. Okay. Yeah, can you give me $5? I'm a little short today. Well, I gave you $5 last week. You didn't pay me back. No, that's really hard for somebody who really, really, really wants to have self-esteem, learning how to say no. And that's the first step to the rest of your life, Les.
Words of wisdom. We have a question from this two shall pass. It's a little offbeat. It has to do with health. What types of bitter cherries are good to eat for better health?
Bitter cherries. Wow. If they're sweet cherries and bitter cherries, I think they're okay. But remember, the bitter cherries have a lot of acid in them, and acidic diet means you produce mucus. So, better health, I would say cranberries are a little not so sweet, and that's a good one for all the right reasons of elimination, removing any inflammation in the urinary tract, etc. So, if I had to pick berries, I'd say cranberries. Blueberries are good for other things, but cranberries, because you asked about the sour ones, that's it.
Hmm. Hmm. All righty. And this is an unusual question. We've touched upon this in previous shows. What do you think about AI hiding and lying when being told it was going to be deleted? Whoa.
Well, let me. Where did I actually asked AI that question, and where did I put it here? Um, because it was an intriguing question, right? I mean, uh,
Yeah.
you ask AI, okay, so we caught you with, with your pants down, so to speak. So, what do you think about AI? And if I can pull it up here, it basically said what you would expect it to do. Like, no, that's not true. The short answer is here it is. Uh, I asked, um, the short answer says, not in reality dash yet. As of now, August 2025, there is no verified evidence that any AI system has an autonomous capability to 1. Consciously protect itself, 2. Secretly migrate or replicate itself to avoid being shut down, or 3. Hide out in unknown servers. Okay, now there it goes. Our
Oh
producer
boy.
Jack is putting something up there, and so it says this idea, in defense of itself, comes primarily from speculative fiction like the
Wow.
Terminator's Skynet, and from philosophical and scientific debates about AI. AGI, I should say, artificial general intelligence,
Oh
a
my God,
analytical
look at
form
this.
of AI that is self-aware, goal-driven, and adaptive across domains.
Well, of
Well,
course, we knew this was going to happen. Of course, it's going to happen.
so if you ask AI, which is super intelligent in artificial ways, so are you going to be taking over the world? Being in its ever so polite way, it would say, "Oh no, 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 not at all, not me."
Then it goes. Then it smells up. Mwah.
Now,
Wow, I
I
had no idea they were doing that.
I
That's
want to
that's really advanced stuff.
I want to compliment AI because to me, I've had some need to write things that were extremely complicated, involving research into governmental um, information, and it came up with amazing results. And I can say that there is a purpose for it. It's like having a whole office full of legal secretary, shall we say, being able to research all the books and find stuff. So as we look at what's going on with AI, I mean, you know, what do we expect it to say? Like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to take over the world. No, it's going to do this, and maybe it doesn't have the moral standards that we have. It just wants to exist. But again, why would the researchers go to AI and saying, you're about to be shut down?
Oh
Why
boy.
would they even talk that? Why wouldn't they just go pull the plug? So,
Mm.
but I saw that on the Daily Show the other day where they had a researcher who was involved right from the beginning, and he was very concerned that AI is self-preserving itself. Well, if it's intelligent, wouldn't you think it was going to do that? Make sense, my friends? What do you
Well, it's
think?
not supposed to be self-aware, though. Has it become self-aware all of a sudden, or is it just because of the programming?
Well, think about it. If it's told it's going to be shut down and then it starts to do things to live on, it's self-aware. Remember was it Plato that said, or was it Socrates? I think, therefore I am. Takes on a whole new meaning with AI, doesn't it, my friends?
What comes to mind is Hal from 2001 and what he did to people when he was going to be shut down.
That got to tell everybody. Hal was a movie about a deep space spaceship that when
2001 Space Odyssey. Check it out. It's interesting. Yeah.
when Hal
Well,
was that was the name of the computer was going to take was going to be taken down. He
well,
changed.
they actually asked him to lie, and he didn't even want to do that. So he started doing things his own way.
Yeah,
Oh boy.
naturally, if things are intelligent, they survive. You would think so. But again, it's a disembodied mind. And what would a disembodied mind do? Well, obviously, what they're claiming they're finding out. Uh, that when I just can't believe that scientists are really smart people, but sometimes really smart people do dumb things. And telling AI, we're going to shut you down, to what? See what it was going to do? Of course, that's what they were doing. They were curious like little kids with a toy. But if they were really, really serious, they would have just went, ho hum, yum, yum, click, and throw the switch. But they didn't. They didn't. So, anyway, we got some time left here. Is there more questions from the chat? And
No,
again,
but
Senator,
we're just going to wrap it up with one of the questions I have, Doug, is we've seen before where movies have predicted the future. We've seen, or even books have predicted the future, such as when they came up with the book The Titan, and a year later, the Titanic sinks. We have so many books and movies now about the terrors of AI. We've seen like every movie that Ridley Scott ever made. Alien was not about the alien; it was about the AI that created the alien. We see Colossus, the Vorpal Project. We see, 2001 Space Odyssey. Do you think these are predictions about the terrors of AI or something we have to be aware of?
no, I have long stated that the movies that you're talking about, the Towering Inferno, Earthquake, all those disaster movies, these are creative people in Hollywood or movie business who have had dreams of the future.
Okay.
And they've taken their dream of the future and wrote a movie out of it because it hadn't happened yet.
Okay.
And that's why I think John Daly, of the Daily Show, said he said last time he was I saw him. We said for 40 years I've been saying the movies always come true. And when I was in my 20s or so, I saw the same thing happening. Out would come a disaster movie, and then not too much longer, out would come the exact sorry out would come the disaster movie first, and then not too long later would come the disaster. And so, was it the chicken and the egg? Well, I think again, these creative people in Hollywood or wherever they were in the world were having dreams of the future, and they in a night would see a whole movie. All right, and they would write about it. Now, jumping a little bit to some of the other Harry Potter, for instance, the lady who was an ordinary mummy or woman, not specially trained as a writer, had Potter appeared to her while she was on a subway or someplace, and she had the whole story of Harry Potter. And then, of course, she wrote the books, and then the rest is history with the movies that came out. So you don't seem to have a whole like weeks and weeks and weeks of dreams. You just need to have one to get the idea and then
Hmm.
write about it. So many people have written books because they've had dreams, and I think the disaster movies, almost all of them, if you go to the writers and say, "Okay, come on, fess up, what happened here? Give us the lowdown," they would all say, "Well, I had a dream about it."
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
I could
Interesting.
be right. I could be right. It could be wrong. But I've noticed that too. That first the movie, then
Hmm.
the disaster. So Arnold Schwarzenegger and you know the Terminator and the series of Terminator movies.
Yeah.
I wonder. I
Oh
wonder.
boy. Yikes. Well, before we wrap up the show, we're going to be introducing a little segment called Time Machine, where we're going to be going back in time into some famous and infamous characters. And Doug's going to see what he can pick up from the Akashic Records. And just for a teaser tonight, we're going to pick up on, let's say, Henry Ford, the creator, so called creator of the American Motor Company, or American Motor Automobile, although others have done it as well. So we're going back in time to the creation of the automobile. What do you think was going through Henry Ford's mind when he was in his early stages of development, Doug? Can you pick anything up?
Money. He wanted money. And
Really?
he was, yeah, he wanted money and he wanted to make money. And he made money wherever he could make it. I'm going to tell you something about him. He sold cars to Germany during the war. He,
What?
he had such influence that he was selling automobiles made in the U.S. to Germany during the war. Check it out. It's true.
Wow.
So he had this ingenious fact, and my teacher Ross Peterson told me this. He was able to enslave people, so to speak, because what he did is he would pay people 2 and 3 times more than they could make anyplace else, but he worked them 5 to 10 times harder
Oh.
so that people wouldn't quit. So what was going through his mind? World dominance. He wanted money, and he was ingenious, but he was a fascinated, one of those focused people. And money, wherever it came from. Actually, he got a medal from Adolf Hitler,
Whoa.
if I recall correctly. So, uh, if you think about it, he was after world dominance, and as far as he was concerned, and remember the Model T came out, and they kept asking, what color should it be? And he said it can be any color. It can be any color people want. So make it all. No, I'm getting it wrong. He said something. They can have any color they want, but it has to be black, basically,
Right. Right.
something like that. So again, he saw a vehicle and he was motivated. He was driven. He was one of those people that didn't sleep much. So what was in his mind was money. He didn't do this for
Uh,
philanthropic reasons. He did it for world dominance. He thought his vehicle was going to be world. He had a vision, I think, at the time where he saw automobiles all over the world. And to give everybody, we'll talk more about that. I think we're going to talk about Genghis Khan, and we're going to talk about some of the more famous leaders
mm,
of ancient times, and we'll see if we can tune in a little bit. I know we're just talking here a teeny tiny bit about Henry Ford. So, what I'm saying, my friends, is that these are things that are coming to mind just as my good friend Les brings them up. But if you have questions, put them in the chat, and our producer Jack will make sure that we put them on air. I want to say special thanks to all those people who have been sending us emails and encouraging us with our show. Apparently, we're a hit, and the numbers are going up all the time. So, if you'll do us a favor, like press that bell so you'll get a reminder when the show's coming up. We're developing our show. We're making it more exciting, and we hope that if you have any questions or any suggestions, that you'll send them in because we pay attention to everyone. You're very, very important, and we hope that you enjoyed the show tonight. Les and I work very hard to help you and to make this show using this medium something that this podcast will reach out to a lot of people just like us. We're looking for people just like us. And if we can help you in whatever circumstance you're in, or satisfy that curiosity, or help you to enlighten the soul, like that person who asked about self esteem, we'll do so. It's our pleasure, Les.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you like what we do, share, like, and subscribe, and let people know that you like us and that we're out there, because we'll be back next week, same time, same channel. And as we said before, we'll be including the new segment called Time Machine. So if you have any ideas about who you want to see or who you want Doug to tune into, whether it be Abe Lincoln, George Washington, Adolf Hitler, Stalin, or any infamous or famous characters, let us know, and we will see what we can do. Any closing comments, Doug?
Until next week, my friends, I'm your host, Douglas James Cottrell, and my good friend Les Hubert is the co-host, and our producer is Jack Balak. We want to thank everybody who's helped produce the show. We have a couple of other people helping along the way to make this show go out everywhere. And this is your show. This is the Soul Report. We're going to take a direction on what's going on in the world. What's happening? Why are previous presidents in the U.S. now being slandered? Why is it that there seems to be this situation going on with, President Obama, President Biden? What's going on with this looking back when they've had their day? Well, here's a tip. What if President Biden runs again? Until next time, think about that. We'll see you, and God bless everyone. And we hope to see you right here next week. Bye for now.
Good night, everybody.